Will you be coming back into public after non-public?
We will. We have some voting to do
All right,
afterwards.
perfect. I'll leave this running then.
Okay, thanks. Lisa, were your issues with connectivity or with the link? I'm just wondering for Garrett's purposes here.
I think I had the wrong link. I was trying to use a previous email. Part of the problem and why I keep disappearing is I'm using Chris's space, which is set up for video conferences, but he literally just got off a class, so I keep having to move stuff around.
Okay, great.
But I think I had the wrong link. So.
All right. Well, I see Garrett's joined us now too. Can you hear us, Garrett? Maybe in a minute. All right, Garrett, can you hear us now?
Yep, how are you guys?
Great. All right, we're all here. So I'd like to call to order the regular Norwich School Board meeting of May 6, 2020. And before I go into our first item of business, since this is Educator Appreciation Week and we can't be with our educators, I'd like to thank them right off the bat. They're doing incredible work and have been for the past, I think by my count, 8 weeks with a week of virtual vacation in between there somewhere too, if not that anybody was able to take it. But I do want to express the thanks from the Norwich School Board to our entire MCS staff for all that they are doing and continue to do and continue to plan to do in the months, hopefully in the weeks ahead, and we can return to some normalcy in the near future. But thank you to all of you out there. We do have looks like 3 members of the public in the attendees list. Actually, one is Principal Lauren Amrine from the Ray School, Patrick Gordon and Stuart Richards. So with the public there, now is the opportunity for public comment. Does anyone from the public wish to address anything that's not currently on the agenda this evening? Okay, Josh, I'm not seeing any hand raises, so if you're not either, I think I'll move on. Okay, with that, we'll go into the agenda review. I think pretty straightforward this evening, but if any board members or administrators wish to reorganize, please do let me know at this time. All right, then we'll dive right into it. And the first item on our agenda is the principal's report from Mr. Ganya, which you have attached to the public content of your board docs. Over to you, Sean.
Thanks. So I'll update current enrollment. We had today a 6th grader enroll. So for our last few weeks of remote learning, we get a new 6th grader, bringing our total up to 311. And then I included a section. We had sent out a survey about how remote learning was going for families at the Marion Cross School. And I included the results. And we had 61 people respond to our survey. Let's see. I think just to summarize our results, overall, the majority of people are happy with what's happening. There are outliers on either end, some people who feel like we could do more and some people who feel like we could do less, which I think is understandable and to be expected. But to date, it looks like we're having good success with our remote learning plan. I'm going to send out another survey in this week's crosswords just to get another data point to see how people are feeling now that we're a few more weeks into remote learning. I wanted to just highlight some changes. So we had instituted across the SAU a day where teachers would do planning. and our day at Marion Cross School is Wednesday. And that provided some hardships for some families who really relied on us making contact with their children each and every day. So we did a modification where on Wednesdays, our specials teachers are going to do morning meetings so that they'll get to rotate through and see each class, and each grade level will get to come together Wednesday morning and have some quality social time together and have a morning meeting with one of our specials teachers. And seemed to work well today. It was our first day. We're working as a staff to see if we can have some more consistency in our approach to our remote learning plan. Today at our staff meeting, we decided in grade level clusters on some basic expectations across the board. So if you're a second grader, it doesn't matter which class you're in, you'll get a common experience, which I feel good about, that we're moving a little more in that direction. Parents indicated that they could use some more feedback and communication from us as a school. So Katie, Nurse Pam, Mr. Bagnato, and I are going to do bi-weekly parents Zooms. So we'll have evenings where parents can check in with us just to see how things are going and share any concerns or questions or celebrations to help us gauge our plan as we move forward. And I just wanted to note that our education assistants have been doing a great job with reaching out to kids. So as we've been instituting our new attendance policy, parents have been letting us know if they need more support. And Mr. Bagnato's been matching up ed assistants with families who need support. And that seems to be going well so far. I included, I won't read them all to you, but there are a number of comments from families about what's working with our remote learning program. And I think because we are building this plane as we're flying it and holding on for dear life while we're doing it, that it's good to celebrate what's going well. And one of the things I really love about the Marion Cross community is their ability to look for the positives. And there were a lot of positives pointed out in the survey, so I thought I would share them with you. And that sums it up for my report for this time.
Great, thanks very much, Sean. And the first check-in with parents is tomorrow night on Zoom, is that right?
It is, yeah.
And then next week, a different grade level group?
Right. So this week will be 4th, 5th, and 6th grade families. Next week will be K1 and 2, K1, 2, 3 families.
Great, thanks for setting that up. Does anyone have any questions for Sean and his report tonight? All right, great. Thanks very much for the report. Look forward to hearing more on your surveys and the interaction with parents and community, but thanks for all that you're doing at MCS through these times. That's also a good lead into where we are district-wide with remote learning. And I'm going to turn it over to Jay here to give us, and maybe Jamie too, to give an update on the state and regional discussion on remote school year. We're not hearing you for some reason, Jay.
I figure out how to unmute and watch my board docs at the same time. There we go. So I will definitely allow Jamie some time to talk about the financial piece of this, which in Vermont is pretty troubling. In terms of remote learning at the state level and regionally, Secretary French has been providing quite a bit of communication, which has been really appreciated by superintendents and other folks that are on those calls. We have another one tomorrow. Most recently, in fact, this week, some guidance came out from the AOE regarding grading and reporting, which is a little late for us because we've gone through this as an SAU recently, at least in terms of high school grading. But again, recommendations, not any pronouncements, but just some ideas about trying to focus primarily on student well-being, more so than anything else. And I feel like Marion Cross, Sean, and the staff have been doing a great job of just that, making sure people are reassured and that they're staying in contact. Another thing that they kind of ironically are pushing right now is leveraging summer 2020 learning programs in regard to continuity of learning. But at the same time, we're hearing some pretty dire things about budgets. So how they propose to fund those sorts of projects, I guess maybe we'll learn tomorrow. So that's sort of where we are with the state of Vermont. But I think it's important to talk a little bit about what we're doing in Dresden and Hanover with regard to pinning down a date for the end of formal instruction. And the SAU board at Monday evening's meeting voted to apply for a waiver from the New Hampshire DOE with regard to how we calculate our instructional time. We typically in New Hampshire do it by a day count, but we are allowed to apply to have a waiver that allows us to count instructional hours. And our calendar has far more hours than are required. You need 990 hours at the high school and middle school level and 945 hours at the elementary level. And we're well over 1,000, even with our snow days for both of those. So I've prepared those waivers. I just need the signature of the board chairs from Hanover and Dresden, which I will be getting tomorrow. And then I'll be submitting that for consideration by the New Hampshire State Board of Ed. They've been approving these throughout the state, a number of districts. In fact, the majority of the districts who've received waivers are intending to end instruction with students on June 5th. And that's the date that we've selected as well. Some of them are ending as soon as May 15th, and others are pushing on toward what their regularly scheduled last day was. But in our case, we are hoping to use 2 weeks of time, not to end all schooling, but to work with our teachers through the end of their contracted year. So that means that we would have 2 weeks to work with our staff around planning. We know we've got a big challenge coming ahead. We don't know for sure what's going to happen at the beginning of next school year. That's uncertainty that we really are going to have to cope with by planning for either eventuality, either a face-to-face beginning of the school year or a continuation of remote learning. If there's a continuation of remote learning, I feel very strongly that we need some serious planning time. We've done, I think, a good job this time around. Sort of, again, we were reeling, and we had 4 or 5 days to put together a plan, and then a little bit of time to sort of enhance that plan. And I love what Sean just described, this ongoing revision to get it tighter and tighter so that we're providing the best possible continuity of learning we can. But if we're going to start next school year on a remote basis, I think we've got a lot more to do. We really need to go through our curriculum and decide what key skills and concepts are going to be the focus for instruction. Make sure that we're even more unified than Sean just described how he's making those efforts now. But I think with the benefit of some additional planning time, we could do a better job of that. And same thing K through 12. So those 2 weeks would be teachers and administrators would still be at work, and they would all be planning. The other thing that we've talked about is there are some students who haven't been able to engage much in remote learning. Not a lot, but as you saw on the survey that Sean shared, there are some, and we don't want to leave those kids behind. And so that 2 weeks, we could also dedicate some of our time to bringing some of those kids a little further along than they currently were able to get. And so that's our plan for that time. I won't know for sure until we get the nod from New Hampshire whether I can then request the same waiver from the AOE in Vermont. But I have already the assurance from Secretary French that if and when it becomes necessary for him to give us a waiver to follow New Hampshire so that we can stay unified as an SAU, that he's prepared to do that. So I'm going to expect that he will allow us to do that. So that's kind of where we are right now. I love, there's some great things happening. I saw a lot of really cool teacher appreciation videos at all of the schools that were really uplifting. And I'm sure fun for the kids to make their signs and participate in that. And so there are silver linings in this. And I think the other thing is that we're learning a lot, not just about how we're implementing remote learning, but we're also, I think, seeing with a little more clarity some of the things that are targets for growth in the future. When we talk about things like consistency of instruction within a grade level, for example, those things are much more glaring when we're all looking at them as parents, and when we're comparing students across schools and even within schools. So that's going to, I think, be helpful in the long run as long as we're willing to learn from it. So that's where we are.
Thanks, Jay. You just said this, but I missed it. What, could you give the timeline again with Secretary French in Vermont, assuming you get the waivers from New Hampshire?
Well, I should know pretty rapidly. I don't know exactly when they'll tell us, but the deadline for getting those waivers in is Friday, and ours will be in tomorrow morning. I would assume we'll hear pretty quickly, and I'll follow up with an email to Commissioner Edelblue in New Hampshire. And then as soon as I know we're going to be given the waiver in New Hampshire, I'll then go to Secretary French. In fact, I'll probably talk to Secretary French tomorrow, so he knows it's coming, and can maybe give me some indication of whether or not it'll fly. I really have no reason to think it won't, just because of the fact that I saved his email saying he'd give us a waiver. But we'll see.
Thank you.
Sure.
Does anyone have any questions for Jay at this point? Kelly?
Yeah, it may be Jay, it may be Sean, but do we have any sense right now, after this number of weeks of remote learning, of how many students at MCS don't have adequate connectivity?
Oh, we do. So that's been something we've been working with. I would say right now we're down to maybe 8 or 10 kids whose connectivity is sketchy. But they've found workarounds in many cases. So the number is getting lower.
Great. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Not seeing any. All right, thank you very much then. Thanks for the update, Jay. Look forward to hearing more from the DOE and AOE. I think we could move on to district financials here as it rolls right into that conversation. Jamie has provided a great deal of information in board docs, public content for us from the past few weeks as it's been coming out. Jamie, Neil and I don't know if other board members were able to participate, but there was a conference call, a webinar on Monday with an analyst with the Joint Fiscal Office who was discussing the situation or the outlook for the Vermont Ed Fund, along with a representative from Congressman Welch's office, and it was hosted by the Vermont Superintendents Association. But Jamie's posted a spreadsheet that the analyst Mark Peralt was working off of at that time. It is the Vermont Ed Fund Outlook May 4th document you see in board docs. And but I'll turn it over to Jamie to see where she might want to start with the overview. And if Neil wants to chime in, or anyone else who listened in on that webinar, please do let me know.
Okay, good evening. How are you? So there's a lot of information here, and please forgive me because I honestly haven't had a chance to go back to the last meeting to figure out where we left off on any of this information, which I doubt was a lot, because early in April we were still trying to figure out, you know, what was going on and where we were at. So
I don't mean to, sorry to cut you off, but even that first webinar with Mark Peralt was after our April meeting, because that took place, I think, on April 9th. So a lot of this is new information, maybe not necessarily for board members, but for anyone listening in.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so I didn't post the first set of Vermont Ed Fund outlooks, and I can repost it in there. It was posted on the SAU and the other one. I pulled it off when I put the new one on, which was May 4th. So there was a Vermont Ed Fund outlook dated, I think it was April 4th, April 9th actually, that the Vermont Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund PDF here, and the Vermont Education Fund Outlook April draft speak to. Those were shared on that initial meeting with the folks from the state of Vermont on the briefing. And at that point, it looked like the revenue shortfall was going to be approximately $90 to $92 million based on their early projections. If you go to the Vermont Ed Fund Outlook May 4th document, which was just shared on Monday, they've updated the outlook now on revenues. And if you look on line 31, the overall outlook for shortfall on revenues into the state ed fund is projected at $152.9 million. The bulk of that shortfall comes off of items 4, 5, 6, and 7, sales and use tax, purchase and use tax, meals and rooms tax, lottery transfer tax. A lot of those are going to come in a lot lower than projected. They're not sure about property taxes right now because, you know, we won't know until the bills go out and see how many of, and I think the bills are due June. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong on that, or later, because there's been some changes. Also shared with us by Mark Peralt was some of the drivers on how we project tax rates, which those numbers are included in the A through G sections up above. The A, B, C, and D are all parts of the formula that drive the tax rate calculations. In January, those numbers were different. The average homestead property tax rate projected in January was $1. Well, you can see it there. That's right there. And they had, for projections, carried the January numbers forward. I think some of these numbers were actually talked about and discussed in the early December discussions with the legislature. So I'm not positive that they've been completely settled yet, but Mark is using what was initially shared in the early letters. So that's the latest information. There is a lot more information that goes along with this spreadsheet that I would encourage folks. In fact, we should maybe put the link, I will be happy to put the link in here from the JFO, right? Or you can go to the COVID page on the JFO and it has a whole ton of information about what all the folks in the legislature, you know, have been discussing and the projections and the expanded information behind it. Okay. I'm going to stop there. If Tom or Neil want to add any comments to what's going on at the state level before I dive into my early projection for Norwich.
Neil, did you have anything you wanted to add at this point? And if any other board members were listening in, please do let me know.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I would add is that there was some discussion about the monies that will be available through the CARES Act and whether or not those would be able to offset some of the shortfall in the ed fund. And I guess the short answer is yes, because I think what's going to happen is that by law, the 90% of that CARES Act funding is supposed to go directly to LEAs, to the local education agencies, so directly to schools. And I think what I heard Mark and Dan say on that call was that then the anticipation is the amount that a school district gets from the CARES Act then would likely be withheld in education funding, so that that money, while it doesn't go to the ed fund directly, would get the benefit of those monies going directly to the schools. That being said, I think the CARES funding was somewhere around 31 million. And we're looking at a deficit right now of about 163 million. So some relief, but not a lot. And I think what I heard Mark say on the call was if things pan out the way that they are right now, and if that money had to be made up through property taxes, you're looking at an average statewide increase of about 23 to 25 cents on the tax rate.
Yeah, that's what I heard as well. And actually, I think you also stated that the 153 million might be a rosy outlook, given that that is anticipating income from consumption taxes that were delayed for a period of time, but that those consumption taxes would be coming from the same restaurants and hotels that haven't been able to be open for the past 2 months. So it's not a good outlook at this point in time. I do not know right now. I don't know if Neil has better outlook on the legislature and the moves they may be taking at this point, but obviously they're meeting virtually as well and thinking of a way ahead here too. Have you
Yeah,
heard
there-
anything on that?
Not specifically related to the Ed Fund. There was some news that came out that it's looking at one of the possibilities is that they're looking at borrowing money to make up for the deficit in the general fund. So I don't know if that same approach might be used to address the shortfall in the Ed Fund as well.
Thanks. Lisa, you have a question? And then-
Yeah, this might be taking us a little bit off track, but I remember from a previous conversation, and don't remember which meeting it was, but they talked about how the Ed Fund would be distributed would be based on the number of people the district had who met a certain, like the poverty level in the school lunch program numbers. And I just am wondering
Title
if that
I.
is still the case and if how that would affect us as a district that is on the lower end of that percentage number.
That's the I'm sorry, that's the CARES Act.
Yeah, I think so. I just was wondering if they, when they were talking about using the CARES money to balance a little bit of this deficit, if they talked about how that would then be redistributed and whether that would hurt or harm us.
So it is based on title percentage received of Title I funding. The good and bad news is that we don't receive a lot of Title I funding, about $23,000 out of 33 million, I think it was, or thereabouts. So the percentage, 90% of our percent of what we receive is really little to nothing. So I guess the good news is that we won't lose a lot in that respect of what we would have possibly gotten directly. I do have those numbers and I'll pull them down and post them here for you. We did run the numbers on what that would look like.
Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. I just was wondering if that had shifted at all when they recognized how big the numbers were going to be.
Not yet. Neil, did you have a follow-up to that? I know Garrett's got a question too. Is yours follow-up to Lisa?
It is, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, to be clear, the way the CARES Act funding would be distributed is, as Jamie said, by the Title I stuff. I know that on the call earlier this week, the AOE is going to be the one to manage the application process for that CARES funding. So while the money, 90% of the money goes directly to school districts, I think it's the AOE's responsibility to figure out what is the application process for those funds and then how will they distribute it. So, you know, while we may see some minimal amount of funding from the CARES Act, what you probably need to understand though is that whatever funding we get will be offset by a decrease in what we receive from the Ed Fund.
Thank you. Garrett, did you have a question? I think you're still muted, Garrett.
Sorry. Maybe Neil or Tom can explain this, but having watched the replays, so just so I'm clear, so a lot of the CARES Act funding, the majority of it's going to the supervisory unions. Is that what the term is that they are using? And is that, are we talking the same thing here? I was just never understanding what they mean by that. It seems like most of it's going directly, you know, even in the footnote, it says 27 million is going to the supervisory unions.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you mean by this?
I'll let Jamie answer. Go ahead, Jamie.
So Garrett, we are a single school supervisory union in Norwich. Whereas there are many supervisory unions that have multiple districts with multiple schools. So even when they talk about supervisory union, we would be included in that definition. It's just we're much smaller than some of the other ones that have multiple districts because of the consolidations.
But the supervisory union amount is the need-based amount. Are we talking the same thing?
Yes, it's based on Title I, percent of Title I funding availability.
But then the good news technically is even if we don't get any of that money and it goes elsewhere to the state, it is decreasing the overall shortfall, because at the end of the day, we do pay more in property taxes generated than we actually pay for our schools. So to the extent the rest of the state is being held up by some of this federal funding, it's actually good for everyone, right?
The share is reduced.
Even if we might not get any of this because we don't really have the need.
Right. Neil, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just say
I
based
guess,
on,
sorry, my question really is then, is that if the money going to supervisory unions, is that basically at some point going to find its way to plug the $150 million hole so far, or is it going out somewhere else?
Did you want to answer something there, Neil?
yeah, so in that sense, so what's going to happen is the money that supervisory union or district was due from the ed fund will decrease by the amount that they got from the CARES Act. That's how we're going to reclaim it to help the ed fund.
If they
So it
vote
would
that
plug
way.
the 150 million shortfall, technically.
It would,
Dollar bill.
I mean, yeah, it's not going to help the whole thing. It'll be a small
Right.
help for a big hole.
Yeah.
But it'll lower it'll reduce it across the board.
So the other thing that I thought was interesting that the gentleman did say, I don't know, I wasn't here then. Apparently in 2008, possibly, there was a transfer of money from the general fund to the ed fund during the recession when there was an issue similar, not as great as this, but similar. So he mentioned that. So I don't know if that's, yeah. So Neil was probably here then.
So I think what he was referring to was the mechanism that we used for funding the ed fund previously. So
Oh,
it used to be that there was a statutory requirement that some amount transferred from the general fund to the ed fund. And then over the past few years, that has changed so that now we have dedicated funds that go into the ed fund. You know, everybody at the time thought it was a better way to handle things. We're finding now in a pandemic, it's not so great because it's funded primarily by consumption taxes. So the sales tax and the rooms and meals tax. So that change was made a few years ago. So I think when they were referring to it, it was how we used to fund the ed fund.
thank you.
Other questions for Jamie? Okay.
Then I'll move on to the early projection, okay?
Yes, please do. Thank you.
So there was an earlier projection, which was a April 9th, 4/9 projection. I've updated it with a May 5th projection. The 4/9 projection was shared with the 4 chairs when we had a meeting. And I believe I shared it during the open budget committee discussions on, oh my God, the days run together. I think it was April 12th or 13th. So they're posted out on the board docs at that meeting. But we've gone back through because there have been some changes in some contracts and some releasing of purchase orders as we're moving forward now. And we know that schools will not resume session in person. So when we look at the Norwich revenues at the top, we are looking to end the revenues favorably. I'm cautious on Vermont state reimbursements due to one that we are not positive is still going to come to fruition, and that has to do with extraordinary reimbursement of $23,560. Rhett was looking into that yesterday. And on the flip side of that, based on we're updating the SEER reports, SEER. The SEER reports are the special education expenditure reports that we are reimbursed for those expenses. And we were updating them yesterday, doing some time studies on, you know, some of the hours that the special education aides are spending with the children. And I do believe that we may come out in the end more favorably than what's projected here for reimbursables. assuming they approve our time studies on the third quarter of this year. So that's I guess at the end of the day, when I say we're looking at favorably ending with $26,000 over what was projected, it may be a little higher than that based on special education reimbursables. Moving on down to the Norwich expenditures, I'm showing them here two different ways because I think it gives you different views on where the monies are allocated and where the monies are spent and where some of the surpluses are. So the top one is by object or subject, depending on, you know, where you work. I think they use that term interchangeably. When you're looking at the expanded budget reports, expenditure reports, the object and subject numbering code is a 3-digit code, and it follows the function codes, which are down below. So I'm showing salaries, which we had a early discussion about, and our salaries run about 72%, I believe, of our budget. And so right there, we're going to have a budget balance, a favorable surplus there, as we did not fill some open aid positions throughout the year. We have some favorable surpluses in the benefits lines, due in part to the other some of the positions not being filled fully, and also because of changes in elections on benefits. Then your other object codes you can see through here. There's professional services, contracted maintenance, travel, transportation, tuition. You can read them all. Some of the differences in the professional services, regular and special education. We have some over expenditures in some of the lines for our speech therapies and occupational therapies. In the contract and maintenance, equipment, services, and projects lines, the bulk of that is the grounds maintenance contracts coming in higher than expected as we went out to bid after the budgets were built and ratified. And the other portion of that is the inter-district charges for the maintenance personnel as they spend time. All of our maintenance personnel are charged to the Dresden School District, right from the director all the way down through the 3 gentlemen who help keep the buildings in good repair. So as they actually spend hours and do work orders at the different sites, the time that they're spent there is billed back to the different districts. So those are the bulk of the 2 overages in that section. Little bit over in travel, transportation, tuition. That was basically driven by special education tuition costs. Dues and interests, just a little bit there. And then we have favorable balances, again, supplies, textbooks, equipment, and transfers for food. Then you can look at the same number. So when you put those all together before we go to the bottom, the projected fund balance surplus at this point in time, based on what I know now and what I've projected along with my folks helping, is a revenue variance that's favorable of $26,054 and an expenditure budget balance variance of $174,419, which would have us in a favorable fund balance of $200,473 as of June 30. So then I said to myself, you know what, I want to show everybody by departments, basically. Functions are also known as departments. It gives you another view of the situation here. And I don't have to read them all for you again, but you can see they're the same numbers where they break down at. I can tell you the highlighted section in the 2410 School Administration Principal's Office. I highlighted that section because that is where the HRA, the Health Reimbursement Account costs reside. It's a state code and that's where we have to put it. So right now we have about $73,000 still encumbered in there for HRA expenses. We get billed on that monthly. So that may go down. Okay, the actual expenditures in that section, the encumbrance may not come to fruition there. Let's see. So the building maintenance lines, it's because the amount of things that we've needed to repair, some of that is service contracts that we were working on. We had some HVAC repairs that needed to be done that were over what we had originally projected. We had more labor coming out of Dresden into our school doing some projects. Grounds maintenance, as you can see right there, that is the contract difference for the winter, summer, fall, the whole entire grounds contract. Student transportation, that's to and from regular transportation. So that's the savings and the changing from the difference in the contracts. Let's see, site improvements. That's twofold. Part of that is our costs that we've been spending on a lot of our septic updates and conversations with the different specialists. Building improvements, where we haven't spent it all out yet, but we've encumbered it in total because we do have projects that can be completed. And then you can see the rest of it all the way down through. So that's our projection. I don't recall if I probably have not posted the expanded line item budgets. I did run them. I just need to post them out there for you to be able to look at. And then you could look back to these overview, summary lines and see where the actual line item differences are included. I wasn't sure where to post them. I could post them in here, but this was kind of like a discussion about the whole overall picture, or I can post them in my section. So I'm happy to put them up wherever you like them put up.
I think this overview is good for here. If you want to put them in your section, that would be fine.
Okay.
Does anyone have questions for Jamie at this point? Anyone from the board? Okay. I'm going to switch over, see if anyone from the public has any questions. I believe you have the ability to raise your hand. I see one question there. Josh, could you let Stuart ask a question? Stuart, I think you're muted, but you should be able to talk now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just as we would in person, please just identify yourself and your where you live.
Stuart Richards, 82 Elm Street.
Thank you.
And a good evening to everybody. And, I'm not really very conversant in what the budgeting is, the budgeting that you're doing. So pardon me for asking what probably will be a question that you have already considered or answered or whatever. But the taxpayers approved a budget recently, and what I'm trying to understand is the variance from the budget that was approved and what is likely. And when I say likely, there's probably a range of possibilities, as Jamie has outlined, but I'm curious to know what the actual, as of May 5th or whenever it is that you looked at this, what the actual increase, decrease from what the taxpayers approved would work out to be. If you can answer it, I don't know.
So I think what you're asking me is, when I post the report, right, that I have run, that I was working from, at the date of May 5th, what does it actually read? Is that what you were asking me, Stuart?
No, I was asking for the increase or decrease, as best you can tell, from what was approved by the taxpayers to what you are thinking will happen in actuality.
Okay, so the dollar amount that was approved by the taxpayers in total, including the Dresden assessment, was the $12,354,106. And I'm looking for my cell phone because I'm in my home office and I don't have a calculator in front of me. So if I'm projecting a surplus of $200,473, right? So how far am I off? Is that what you mean? How much is this, what percent is the savings that we're projecting?
Percentage or the actual number? I think you
Oh.
just mentioned an actual number, but I'd like to write it down.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you couldn't see it on the screen. I'm sorry. It's
No, I'm looking directly at you, and that's as much as I can see.
okay. It's on
And
the
there's no numbers on your forehead.
Oh, okay. You'd be surprised. So the expenditure budget balance we're projecting is $174,419. That's on the expenditure side. And then on the revenue variance right now, meaning that we got more revenue than expected in a few of the different lines, is $26,054. So when you add the two together, would be $200,473.
$200,473.
Yep, 473. Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. And Stuart, if you go into board docs even under the public content, these numbers are there, so you don't need to write them down. You could just download the sheet Jamie just went over.
Or I could email it to you, Stuart.
Oh, that would be terrific.
Okay,
Thanks so much.
I can email it to you now so you have it.
Okay, and I see
Thanks
Neil.
again.
Thanks, Stuart. I see Neil has a question too.
I asked just a clarifying point here. I just want to make sure what Stuart is, the data that we're talking about, Stuart, this is the budget that was passed by voters last year, not the one that was just passed. And what we're talking about is the variance in spending on that budget, not the one that was just approved by voters in March.
For the fiscal year that ends June 30th.
Correct.
If I can rephrase my question, then I'd just like to, I'm interested in what's current, actually, rather than what was the year before. So if it's possible to answer.
So Stuart, we are currently in fiscal year 20, which goes from July 1st of 2019 to June 30th, 2020. The review that Jamie just gave us is current, and her projection for the end of the year is that we will have a $200,473 balance.
Positive.
And so we don't begin spending what was passed at town meeting day this year until July 1 of 2020.
So the $200,473 represents
Estimated savings on last year's budget.
a savings.
The one we're in.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Any other questions for Jamie? All right. Thank you. Thank you, Stuart. Jamie, is that it for the fiscal update?
That's what I have for now. Yeah, when we do the June one, I'll post all the different funds because, you'll have the food service fund and you'll have the grant funds, but they're money in, money out. They're self-supporting.
Great. All right. Thank you. It's nice to get a little bit of good financial news there too. With that, we can move on to a different subject altogether. And Sean, if you're ready, I'd like to move on to item C, draft 2021 school schedule.
Sure. And I'm hoping everyone has pulled it up so that you can kind of follow along as I talk through this. So I thought it would be nice to have a topic other than COVID-19 for us to think about, maybe something thinking about the future and when we are all back in school and not doing school from our homes. So this is our draft of our schedule for next year. It's not complete yet and has to go through a few more iterations with staff and different members. But I wanted to just give you an idea of some things that we're working on to help improve our program. One being, if you look at the first one, in the top left-hand corner, it tells you what the certain schedule belongs to. So this is the special schedule. And one of the things we worked on doing this year is to come up with a consistent block across the school so that um, things happen in 45-minute blocks. Those blocks could be combined, so a teacher might get a double block of teaching time, but we want to have some consistency so that when we're scheduling, we can get the most out of our interventionists. We can put some other intervention time in. We can have team planning across the board. So if you look at the special schedule, it's built into 45-minute blocks. This just gives you an overview of what we offer for music, French, library, guidance, art, PE at our school. If you scroll down to the next one that says kindergarten schedule, what we're working on this year is having that 11:30 time, having a time every day where a whole team has their kids going to specials so that that team can plan together. I'm hoping that one of the things that comes out of the curriculum audit is maybe a need for us to work together as grade level teams to plan and to look at our curriculum and do some revision work. And in anticipation of that, we need time together to do it. So in this schedule, each grade level has common time every day where they can plan together and have some common communication. The empty blocks are the pieces that we have to go back in now and fill in. So that's where our literacy and math and science and social studies time will be. And I just want you to note as we go through the how those empty blocks fill up. One of my hopes is that we start looking at balancing our program a little bit. So we offer a lot of specials at the Marion Cross School, which is great. One of the things that creates a struggle with is finding time to offer math and literacy and science and social studies and some basic pieces, which isn't as much a problem in kindergarten. So kindergarten has a nice block across that 11:30 time. They have a lot of open time where we can plug in teaching. It works pretty well. If we go down to first grade, they have a 1:10 specials block. They still have some good teaching time in there. I should note that 8:10 to 8:40 time, Greg Bagnotto and I are working on bringing responsive classroom into our school. So we would start in each classroom, we would start with a morning meeting, some social time and community building time. So we've set that apart in our schedule so that the time is there. If you scroll down to second grade, they too have a common planning time each day. Then when we get into third grade, our blocks start filling up a little more with specials. We have an increase in the amount of time kids have French instruction in third grade. So it takes a few more blocks. So third grade teachers have this first block across the top. And if you look at Thursday, there's a block that says intervention. One of the things we're trying to do is to plan ahead for what remote learning might have cost us or cost children. So we know that not every child is being able to get the education they would in school. And actually some children are probably getting a little more attention than they would in school, and some children are getting a lot less. So there's going to be, when we come back, a discrepancy in what kids are able to do. So in building the schedule, we looked at building some intervention time in. That's small group time where third graders, even though there are 3 sections of third grade, for some of their specials, they'll be split into 2 sections so that one section will go to PE, the others will stay behind, and their 3 teachers will split them up into small groups and do some intervention work to try to recoup some of what we may have lost during our remote learning time. So just trying to be proactive and building in some time for kids to get caught up with the skills that they're missing at the end of this year. So for third grade, there are 4 of those blocks throughout the week, 1 each day except for Wednesday. If we scroll down to fourth grade, it's very similar, where we've built in some intervention blocks there. One thing we found we had to do to be able to fit all of the specials in and to build an intervention is switch to grades that have 3 cohorts going to some of the specials in 2 groups rather than 3. Just builds us a little more flexibility and allows for building that intervention time in. And then we get down to 5th and 6th grade, and it gets a little harder to get the time in that we need to teach kids. Marion Cross School is a different experience for me in the amount of academic time we give to children. So we at Marion Cross School tried to give equal attention in the 5th and 6th grade to literacy, math, science, and social studies. But if you look at the recommendations of the amount of time we should be giving to mathematics and literacy, most often it's 90 minutes. We give 45 minutes a day, and we try to fit 4 45-minute teaching blocks in a day around all of the specials. So around, if you're a 5th grader, then you have sometimes 2 or 3 specials in a day. So fitting that academic time in is a bit of a challenge. So that's something that I'm hoping that we can look at over time is how to maybe integrate some of those subject areas a little more, or look at what's recommended and maybe look at our whole program and see what's recommended as best practice, what are we doing, and what could we do to get a little closer to that. And those, again, are hopes that I have for the curriculum audit, that maybe some of that we'll get some direction from there. Let's see, and if we look at 6th grade, so the interesting thing about 5th and 6th grade is that there isn't as much time to build in that intervention block. So 5th graders will have 2 of those intervention blocks throughout the week, but because of fitting in those 4 45-minute academic blocks each day and all the specials blocks, it makes it hard to do that piece. So that's something that we're still looking at, is how can we work with this schedule a little more to see if we can squeeze in a few more times for kids that we know are going to need some extra support, or kids that we know are going to need some enrichment. And then 6th grade, the way it works out, because students have French 4 times a week, in addition to all of the other specials, there isn't yet time to put any type of remedial or enrichment time in the 6th grade schedule. So that's what we're still working on. So I wanted to give you just an overview of our schedule. One of the pluses to this is that there are these consistent blocks. So when we put the academic blocks in, we can arrange it so that our reading specialist isn't having conflicting times where she might want to work with a 2nd grader and a 1st grader, but they have literacy at the same time. So by having these blocks and scheduling it accordingly, then we can make sure that 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade have literacy at a separate time, allowing her to get in and give some support. Also, just putting in this morning meeting and perhaps some announcements to try to bring us together a little bit in the morning, and just continuing to work on that intervention block. So there's where we're at so far with the schedule, and I would be curious if you have questions or thoughts or comments.
Thanks, Sean. And could you just, I'm sorry, state again the timeline for this? So with this, you'll take it to the teachers, work with them to come to consensus on where you move ahead on. And this is a bit of a overly detailed, I'm sure, for this discussion question, but I was always under the impression that different grade levels took different lunch and recess times, and because otherwise it'd be crazy to have 300 and plus kids on the playground. Is that something that's changing as well?
No, I think that's probably an error in the flipping them back and forth.
Okay.
Process-wise, we've been working on developing this schedule for about 3 months. So it started by, as a school, each grade level, each committee determined what are the priorities, what do we want to get out of a schedule, what do we want for kids in this schedule. Then we took all that information and we have a school leadership team. The school leadership team looked at all of the data that we collected, and we came up with, I think it was 4 areas where we said, this is important to us. So when we do build the schedule, it's important for teachers to have time to collaborate. It's important for us to have some time to do intervention with kids. It was important to have some community building time, and it was important for people to have balance of academic time. So those were our 4 things that we came up with at the beginning. And then as we've been building, we've been saying, all right, those are going to be our most important. Anything else that comes up, those 4 things trump them. So if somebody wanted all of music for 5th grade on one day, but that conflicted with being able to have team planning time, then we went with the schedule that had team planning time. So we've been through the process of a staff of talking about what's important. Then we brought this back and made a first draft and shared it with that building leadership team and did some modifications. Had we not gone to our remote learning, we would have met as teams to go through this to fine tune it. But our next plan is to share this out remotely with teachers, have them give feedback, look for flaws like the lunch and recess piece, and then make those changes and come back with another draft in hopes that when we leave the building, our schedule is all in place and we're all set for next school year. It's kind of late for me. Typically, I would have had our schedule built by the time we left for April vacation, but we had the process took us a little bit longer.
Well, I think that's understandable. Kelly, did you have a question? I thought I saw your hand.
I did. And yeah, you partially answered it already, Sean, but I just wanted to be sure when you say that the teachers are participating, that includes the teachers across the board, so that when you're thinking about ganging up specials, 2 classes in one, I'm imagining the art room being utter chaos if two sections were put together. So obviously Caitlin has given her input on that being an option wherever it might be.
Yep, and some people are like Rick in his PE classes. He's like a double class is fine because I have plenty of space, plenty of my activities work for that. Sometimes it's better. Travis for music was pretty adamant that it was better in the smaller group. So we took those into account when we did this to try to balance it out so it met the needs of people. But again, we looked at what our overall goals were. So there are a couple places where people said, oh, I really don't want them in 2 groups, but doing that would have not allowed us to accomplish one of our school-wide goals. So we had to do some compromising on that.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Lisa?
Sorry, I'll unmute. Will you add another adult in the room when you double up? And if so, does that have any budget implications?
So most all of the classes that are doubled up have an ed assistant that will go with the class. So there's an extra adult. So it doesn't have a budget implication because there was already that person budgeted for.
Thank you. Neil?
I think based on what we were hearing last week, as coming from Secretary French, it sounds like his view of the fall is likely some form of remote learning will continue. His statement has been until there's a vaccine available. So I wonder to what extent your schedule could accommodate maybe not complete remote learning for the entire student body, but if what we come back to is some sort of hybrid model.
I think that's a whole nother schedule. I think we would have to sit down as a school and think about what worked to come back remotely, which we will do at the end of the year. But I don't think this schedule would fit that need.
So with those, assuming we get the waivers and school ends on June 5th, you'd use that time period between June 5th and June 19th, I think it is, to work on 2 parallel schedules based upon where we are at the end of the summer?
Depending on where we are at the end of the summer, I would advocate for using those 2 weeks to have a solid plan. So if we do have remote learning coming back, that we're ready for it, and we've got a cohesive system across all of our grades.
Mm-hmm.
That would be my hope.
Thank you. Other questions for Sean? Okay. Thanks for the overview, the planning process, and looking forward to hearing more as you and the teachers plan ahead for next year. And hopefully in the classroom.
Yes.
Next up, an item we've had on our agenda for over a year now, and we'll continue to do so, is an update on the septic system. Jamie's running away from the camera, I see, but I think she's willing to talk and give us an update. I see Tony's joined us too, so we do have a little bit of an update. We've been out gathering more information since we last met in April. We had been in touch with folks from an organization known as Biohabitats, which is an eco-machine system, and they just got us some information in today on what that could look like. I haven't had a chance to fully review the document, so I'll let Jamie and maybe Tony talk to that if they've had a chance to do a quick review. We're also getting test results back in from our contracted hydrologist, Steve Ravel. But we're just getting in these documentation today, or maybe yesterday as well, and have not had a chance, so at least I haven't, to fully review. We'll be posting these in the near term to the SAU website where we have information, have been posting information about our assessment of the septic system situation. But I'm going to let Jamie and then Tony, if you want to as well, jump in here and talk to what you're hearing from maybe Biohabitats, and I don't know if you've got an overview quite yet from Steve Ravel.
So I hesitate to share all of that here without everybody being able to take a look at it. It just came in late yesterday afternoon. I sent it out today. Steve Ravel's report is 38 pages long. So to summarize it, I think, not being an engineer, I don't know that I would do that myself. I'll say it's very complete. It's very easy to understand. You know, it kind of confirms a lot of what we suspected and know. And so I'll hope that we can, you, myself, Tony, can go over that with Mr. Ravel hopefully tomorrow so we can get the final posted. It's in draft format to us because he wanted to be able to meet with us via Zoom to go over it to see if we had any questions where he needed to clarify any parts. The Biohabitats, we had spoken with them two or three times, right, I think, to ask them, you know, what some of the possibilities might be and what kind of costs that would look like in order to figure out what some of the alternative options that might be available for us as a district alone, and also for us as a district with the other folks who were possibly interested in doing something cooperatively. So that came in, I think that was yesterday afternoon too. So that one has come in. There's a list of documents. There's some assumptions in the document and a list of questions in the document about deliverables. And I needed to follow up today to see how many of those assumption documents exist in the proper format, to see if we'd have to incur additional costs or not. We did speak to them about not just I know we talked early on about building something similar like a biohabitat where it's an actual treatment center and then, you know, with plants and all of that. In speaking with Aaron from Biohabitats, you know, we discussed the fact that the septic system that we have now, which is aging, primarily runs okay when the ground's not frozen. And so she was going to, if we contract with them, look into perhaps a hybrid situation where we could look at alternatives for the months where the system doesn't properly work. I don't know if that would be approvable by the state or not. We'd have to look at what that is and what the costs were. And if there's any, you know, if the land nearby would therefore come into play again, meaning either the Peisch property or, you know, some other location nearby. So we're in the early stages of receiving that document. She did tell us that were we to move ahead and engage with them, that it's a pretty quick turnaround and they could get the options and opinions of cost and rough draft or draft versions of as-built to us probably by our June meeting. So it's a pretty quick turnaround once, you know, we have a chance to look at it together and decide if that's something we want to pursue. I ran out of the office because it was 6:15, and I have to tell you, I totally left my entire huge septic binder sitting right by my desk to put in my big bag over here. I'm thinking the approximate costs were around $12,000 or $13,000 to engage them for both 2 or 3 options as the district alone and 2 or 3 options as the district with a in a cooperative situation. You know, if we were to make the decision to possibly do both, then that's when I think it would be time for us to perhaps sit down with some of the other folks that showed early interest and enter into some kind of MOU for cost sharing. So we're moving forward. I think we're making some progress. Right now, you know, the grass is green and everything's been rained on a lot. So we've taken down the fence. We've been told it's safe for folks to use the area. That's what I know. I don't know if Tony wants to add anything.
And the
Tom?
system's been used a little bit less. over
Thing
the
I
past
would
few
add it-
months, right?
Go ahead, Tom.
No, I was just
Tom, I
saying,
would
the
just
system's been
add-
used a little less.
I can't, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I would just add, saying, Jamie, we just got this information. We have not had, as a team, been able to digest it. And we probably will have more information come June. But there are multiple options and yeah, the system at Marion Cross currently is working as it was built. It's only the winter months that work gives us trouble. So hopefully we can report more on designs and options in a few weeks.
Okay. Thanks, Tony. And that was Tony Daigle, head of Buildings and Grounds.
Oh, yeah, sorry about
That's okay. Any questions for Jamie, me, or Tony from the board at this point? Okay, not seeing any questions from the public at this point. Stuart has a question. Josh, would you let Stuart in? Okay. Stuart, looks like you're unmuted.
Stuart Richards, 82 Elm Street. So I'm wondering if you have a total on costs and a copy of the contract that exists with Pathways, and maybe that's been posted, I don't know.
Jamie, did you have that?
Oh, wait a minute. There I am. Am I unmuted?
You're unmuted.
Oh, good. Okay. So the total that we spent on with Pathways, that seems to be interesting for everybody, for this year, as of, I pulled that this morning.
It actually started last year, I think, didn't it?
It actually started 3 years ago. Did you want total cost for all 3 years? I thought I
Sure.
gave you last year's.
Yeah, that would be helpful if you got it.
Okay, so Stuart, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pull it down, email it to you, and I'll post it to this site because I pulled down this year's. I thought I gave you last year's already. But I can do it as for the whole, all 3 years if you want. That's no problem.
That would be super if you can.
Okay, and we don't have an actual, what we did, Stuart, is that we don't have a signed contract per se when we knew that this was going to be a long-term effort with a lot of questions and, you know, twists and turns perhaps. What we did was we went out with an MOU and asked for different types of firms to send in their statement of, oh God, I can't think of what it's called.
No, I do have that, Jamie.
Oh, you do, okay. So we're being billed based on what those costs were stated back, I think that was in 2008.
Without a formal contract.
Yes, yep,
Okay.
yes.
Well, that answers the question.
Okay, all right, and I will pull the vendor invoice history and post it out there. We'll post it in the, where do you want to post it, Tom? You want to post it here or you want to post it on the septic site?
Why don't we do both places, Jamie, just so it's.
Okay, I'll pull all the costs, including Lincoln Applied. There's more than just pathways involved here.
Okay, thank you.
Right, you've got the cost for Steve Ravel, or will have the cost for Steve Ravel and his hydrologic studies.
Yeah, Lincoln Applied.
Yeah.
Pathways, and there's a third one. I can't for the life of me think of who it was.
So do you, at this point, does anybody know, or if you've had a chance to review, and maybe you haven't, more about the analysis of the water table and what that tells us is possible or not possible?
The 38-page report, as we mentioned, just came in, and I just emailed it out this afternoon because it's been a couple of 2 busy days. Sorry.
Great. Is that going to get posted?
Absolutely.
Okay, super. So everybody will get a chance to get a cup of coffee and look at it.
Oh yeah, it's a very
And 2 cups of
expanded
coffee.
reading. A couple
Or 2
cups.
cups of coffee, yeah. Has there been any further conversation about insulation as opposed to a berm or in conjunction with a berm?
I think that's all part of the discussion here. I think that's going to be something that comes out of this report from Mr. Ravel. And we obviously should have some information too, based upon what we saw last year. And we, you know, leaving over half of the green fenced off with still seeing some unfortunate release from the system. But I don't know if Tony wants to address any of that at this point too. Tony, your connection's a little slow too, so we may need to ask you to repeat yourself, but go ahead if you've got anything you want to say.
Well, I don't think, I mean, we as a group have talked about that, but I believe we have to speak with Mr. Ravel.
Yeah, Tony, I think we just lost you altogether. So Stuart, I think the short story is that we're expecting to get a lot of information from this report.
Don't have a definitive answer on that.
Yeah. Hey, Tony, you're dropping on and off, so we're only catching every 10th word or so.
Well,
So I think our answer at this point, Stuart, is we've really got to dig into that 38-page report. We've got to have the Zoom meeting with Mr. Ravel and review his findings before we can determine any more on the possibility for insulation.
Yeah, just one more comment, and then I'll depart.
Yep.
So again, comments made by Terry Shearer appear to show that insulation is or could be an important part of the toolbox in trying to solve problems with the existing systems or with the existing system if it gets modified. So I'll just leave you with that comment and appreciate your hearing me out.
Yep. Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you. Have a good one.
You too. And as Stuart leaves, I will just point out that we are meeting regularly with Terry Shearer as we get more information in. So he's certainly part of our discussion and gets the updates from us regularly. And we brief him out as we need to be doing. Are there any other questions from the board regarding septic? As Jamie mentioned, we've got these a report and a proposal in. We will probably post them between this meeting and our June meetings, and we'll make all of you plus the public aware of when that happens. Okay. All right. With that, we'll move on down our agenda items. Next up is the draft of the 2020-21 agenda topics, which is posted to board docs. I have one comment, and then if any other board members want to jump in, please do. This looks like a bit of an older version. Jamie and maybe Jay, if you're looking at it, I think we bumped back our budget discussion, or at least the first round of presentations to December's meeting. And this doesn't indicate that at this point in time.
Tom, I'll address that. We had a similar issue when we reviewed the SAU template as well. And Jamie pointed out the fact that we did make that change last year. We didn't change the template though. So we can certainly amend it to reflect the earlier schedule.
That'd be great. Jay, another thing, and Jamie as well, that I was thinking, we had this discussion in January this year when we were doing our public meetings. And I think we found in the last few years that we get down to the last meeting or two of the budget and then hear from the public about some fairly large items that people would be interested in seeing on the budget. This past year was a pre-K moving from half day to full day. We realized we really need to start doing a lot more communication earlier in the process, such that the public understands that if there's going to be a time for the board to address big items to add into the budget, that really needs to start in the August timeframe. So it would be great if we just maybe put on our schedule here, maybe in the August schedule or even over the summertime, a communication plan for outreach to the public with regard to planning for the upcoming budget year. And this one's obviously going to be a really important one. And I do see there's a Claudette in our participant attendee side of things too. If that's Claudette from the select board, I think we'll try to reach out to the select board too with some thoughts on moving ahead with our budget planning in the coming year as well, which has been discussed between the two boards. And Jamie.
What if we look to hold, what if we tried to hold a, oh, Sean, what are they called? Like when you ask parents to come in and have conversations, like a tea or a
Forum.
Yeah, forum. Thank you. What if we held like an invite, a budgetary forum and an invite in early September, assuming we're allowed to congregate, or even do it by Zoom? We could maybe even do it by Zoom just because it's really cool and it works so well. And have people ask people if they have ideas, thoughts, concerns, problems, questions, whatever, that this is a great time to come and, you know, chat with us. Could do it with the budget committee.
Yeah, I like it. Sean, you think it's a good, you
I
on
think
board?
it's a great idea.
Okay. Neil? Good? All right. Thank you. Lisa, Kelly, Garrett, all good. All right, well, we'll look to move ahead with that plan and outreach then. Those are just that's my initial comment looking at the agenda topics as you see them here. Does anyone else on the board see anything that they think should be referenced? Lisa?
Yeah, just the same comment I made Monday at the SAU one. I'm wondering if we want to add a remote learning update formally in here that's different than the curriculum discussion, just because it feels different somehow. Like either for planning forward or for lessons learned from, I'm hoping that it's just lessons learned from now and it's not for planning forward, but on the off chance we would have to do some mid shifting, I just feel like it would be worth, yeah, it just seems like it's worth having it as a separate item. And then just Jamie's, to tag on with Jamie's comment, I think the forum's a great idea. And I think the more we can make it look authentic and real, like the actual budget forums in January, the more we'll get people to raise the big ticket items early. You know,
Yep.
so.
I agree. Jay, do you think you could take the suggestion about the remote learning review and standardize it with the discussion from SAU meeting the other night?
Doing it as we speak.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Other comments on the agenda topics? Garrett?
I mean, just looking at it here on the budget, I mean, would you want to do what Jamie suggested, maybe in October with the public, just to give everyone a chance in September? I don't really know, till having not been on the board before, not exactly sure, you know, what your timeline is. I'm just wondering what's most valuable for people kind of coming back from the summer and then making sure that there's some pithy budget numbers to talk about at that event.
Yeah, and I think it actually might be worthwhile to have two of them too. Maybe August is the
Yep.
time frame when you do the brainstorming, and then October is when you've got some actual numbers to and some days in the school year behind you to put towards it. We had discussed that that might be a better time as well to do some outreach with the select board as well, because they'll be a little bit further along in their season too.
Yeah,
So
so that
maybe-
would still give us like, that would still give you November and December to kind of wrap in some of the public input maybe, right?
Yep. No, I think that's a good idea. A couple lead-in meetings or forums.
Cool.
Thanks. Others? Okay.
Tom, you're muted.
I think
Of course I am, sorry. Next item up is the board meeting schedule for next year. Does anyone have any questions with regard to that? It is posted to board docs as well. All right. I don't recall having any edits from the SAU meeting the other night. Did we, Jay, that should be considered here?
I don't think so. No.
All right. Moving right along. Financial management questionnaire. I'll turn it over to, I'm assuming Jamie for this one.
Sure, and this may be, I'm gonna tell you, I went out and I read the VSA just because I'm not as familiar with Vermont statute as New Hampshire. And so I went out, first of all, I found this in my list of things to do and had a little bit of heart failure because I was like, oh my God. I think it was supposed to have been done earlier. But then I went out and I read the Vermont statute. We don't get in trouble for not doing it in a certain time frame, but they suggest that you do it by December 31st in the statute. But the statute always also talks to your auditor doing this during the fiscal audit and utilizing a form similar to this one. So I'm almost thinking that I may have duplicated the efforts, but I'd rather have it duplicated and posted somewhere because I really like this format. It's very, easy for people to look at, understand, discuss. And I had found it in amongst documents that, in different other years. So that's why it's here. And I'm going to have Kate add it to our meeting schedule there for December meeting, okay? Because while I do believe that we do fill out a questionnaire that's very similar to this with our auditors every single year, which is what the VSA requires, I really do like this format, and I don't think duplicating efforts is a problem, really. It's not, So that's why it's here. I would like to have it done and have it on the record so we can post it like we should.
Okay. Any questions for Jamie? Anything with regard to the way the form has been addressed? Okay, not seeing any. I'm realizing, oh, sorry, Jane.
I'm sorry, one other thing. And if you haven't seen our financial management document. I'll probably post this along with that, even though I think that's posted on our website. I think for the new folks, you may not have seen that, and it's a pretty extensive document. We did actually share it with the town of Norwich too. So we'll make sure that you have a copy of that.
All right, thanks, Jamie. I just want to reference here, I'm still learning my way around which icons I should be looking at in Zoom, and there was a Q&A. There was a question in the Q&A from Claudette, who was asking if I had a specific question for her. And if Claudette's still listening, I'll follow up with you later. Just seeing your name in the attendees jogged my memory about our earlier discussion about catching up with the select board for thinking through the next year budget. So Claudette, I will reach out to you after this meeting. Thanks for checking in. Next on our agenda is the possible VSBA resolutions. I don't have much to discuss here, but I wanted to get this on our agenda now, especially for new board members, Garrett and Lisa. Now is the time to start thinking of resolutions that we as a board may wish to propose to the Vermont School Boards Association. The deadline in a normal year for proposals of resolutions to the VSBA is late July. We start thinking about it now because we don't normally have a July meeting and would need to send them in as a board following voted on after our next meeting in June. For those of you who don't know, the resolutions are what we would like the VSBA to focus on in their lobbying efforts in future years. So if you want to think through that in the coming month or so, we can certainly think about including a resolution to send on to the VSBA. They do have a resolution committee which either approves of and recommends forwarding to the full School Boards Association at their usually October annual conference to vote on for moving ahead there. And Jay, I think I saw you had a question or a response.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out to our new board members that we have kind of an in with the VSBA as well. I happen to personally know the president. He sits on our board, so Neil's going to be a great resource for us with the VSBA.
Okay. Maybe he was holding back for a reason, Jay. I don't know. Would Neil like to say anything at this point in time? Did I misrepresent the process at all, Neil?
No, you did a great job. The only thing that I would add is that the resolution process is the primary vehicle for determining what the VSBA will focus on through either their advocacy or through support and assistance to school boards across the state.
Great. Thank you, Neil. Any questions on the resolutions? Yes, Garrett.
Yeah, just what would be some examples? I mean, is it financial? Is it policy? I don't really, just help us think through if there's anything that.
Yeah, it's kind of a mix, and I should have thought through that beforehand. What I normally do too is provide a link to the VSBA site so you can see past examples. I'm going to send out to the board after this message that has a link because the VSBA does keep the previous year's resolutions on their website. So I'll send that to you so you can get an idea of how it works. You'll also see what the VSBA Committee on Resolutions recommended to move forward to a full vote. And I'll give you a sense of the types of things that they were looking at least at that period of time. All right, other questions? Okay, with that, we can move into our business requiring action. The first item of which is the approval of DFA investments, which is an annual approval that the board is required to make. We just did this with, I believe, both SAU and Dresden boards previously. Jamie, did you want to talk to this at all?
Sorry, I was out grabbing the VSBA link from the last year's resolutions. So I got off of the regular board meeting. Let me just come back to you here.
Oh, yeah, I could post that too. Sorry.
That's okay. I figured I wasn't up yet, so I could just go grab it.
Well, now that you're up, I'll get it.
Okay, that's all right. So Oh, the DFA, yeah, okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, DFA is, we do it every single year. We actually complete, and we do it at every single district. And we actually completely reviewed this, I think 2 years ago. It's what we comply with when we're either borrowing and or investing. So we aren't looking at borrowing anytime soon, which is good, you know, probably about a year anyway. And we've got monies invested right now and did follow through with this from the monies we received on the big project that we're paying every year for Dresden. So in Vermont, they give you the money up front in one lump sum, and then you it's up to you to invest it and then draw off it every single year if you're making payments or however you see fit. In New Hampshire, they meter, when they were giving aid, they metered it out every single year. I don't think Vermont's giving aid now either. So that's it. It's pretty extensive and follows all the Vermont laws on how we do it, and our treasurer's involved, and we bring it to the boards and everybody votes on it and looks over the different, you know, rates and offers. And
Okay, thank you. And as I said, this is an annual approval that the board takes on. Does anyone have any questions? You're not seeing any, I'll entertain a motion. Kelly.
All right. Move to approve, get back there. Sorry about that. Move to approve policy DFA investments as presented.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Lisa. Great. I will go by the way I see you. Neil? All in favor? Neil?
Aye, yes.
Garrett?
Garrett, yes.
Lisa?
Christie, yes.
And Kelly?
Hersey, yes.
And Camden, yes. So it's unanimous. Thank you. Next item up is the approval of expenditures, and I'll entertain a motion for that. Yes, Kelly.
Keep going. Move to approve expenditures from April 3rd, 2020 to May 1, 2020 in the amount of $477,283.10 as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Lisa?
I'll second. We'll keep this going.
Thank you. And for anyone interested, they are attached to board docs.
and I have them here.
And we have them here. And yes, so we'll have to sign those later. How are we?
How will we do
No,
that?
I'm noting your vote and
Okay.
that I've witnessed it and that it was via Zoom and the date and time and signing it.
Great. And I should have referenced this as we went around last time, but we are required to do a voice vote for this. So Neil?
Odell, yes.
Garrett?
Garrett, yes.
Lisa?
Christie, yes.
Kelly?
Hersey, yes.
And Camden, yes. That's unanimous. Next up is the approval of minutes of the April 1st meeting, and we'll keep going with
Going,
Kelly.
okay. Move to approve the minutes of April 1, 2020 as presented.
And do I have a second? Lisa? Yes.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Are there any questions, requested edits? You're not seeing any. Neil?
Odell, yes.
Garrett?
Garrett, yes.
Lisa?
Christie, yes.
And Kelly?
Hersey, yes.
And Camden, yes, as well. So unanimous too. Finally, we have one policy to be approved tonight. You did see this in a previous meeting for the first and second readings. It is IJOA, field trips and excursions. It is attached to board docs. And Jay, did you want to talk to this briefly?
Sorry. Yeah, we've seen this policy now, I think in three of our four boards were the last to approve it. We went through to bring it up to date. And actually one provision within it speaks to overnight field trips. And that was something that one of our community members brought to our attention to make sure that we're providing safe supervision of our kids when they're on overnights. And we're ready to put it in place.
Thanks, Jay. Does anyone have any questions? You have no questions. Kelly, would you like to lead us off again?
Move to approve policy IJOA, field trips and excursions as presented.
And Lisa, do you have
I will second.
okay, thank you. And roll call vote. All those in favor? Neil,
Odell, yes.
Garrett,
Garrett, yes.
Lisa,
Christie, yes.
Kelly,
Percy, yes.
and Camden, yes. So unanimous again. Thank you. We'll move right into the communications and reports. Report of the chair is up first, and I don't have a lot to report tonight. I did reach out to our PTO. As you may have noticed, we did not have a PTO report tonight for rather obvious reasons, but I did reach out to Emily Bradley, one of the co-chairs, and while they did not have a lengthy update to provide us, she did want to pass along that, and you may have seen this in one of Demo's great blog posts the other day, that the PTO, in lieu of their spring grants, decided to purchase books for each child at MCS. They asked teachers to pick out a book for their class, most paired it with curriculum, and they ended up buying 320 books from the Norwich bookstore and distributed them, I think, last week, which was a great way to support education and the local business all at the same time. So that was really great work, as always, on behalf of the PTO. I have been remiss in following up on the Finance Committee. You'll recall this came up last fall in a desire to restart a Norwich Finance Committee that included a review of the education side of the town budget as well. I have been in touch with John Langus. It was some time ago that he drafted up a document, and I need to, I have some recommendations in terms of how that can be edited. Need to go back and forth with him. And then we'll come back to the boards, both boards, to seek approval on a new MOU so that we can try to reestablish a Norwich committee that, as I mentioned, reviews the Norwich education budget, and then hopefully would form with the Hanover Finance Committee, a Dresden Finance Committee. So I hope to have more information on that moving forward as well. I think that is all I have for this evening. So other than to say one more time, thank you to all of our educators. And during this Educator Appreciation Week, we are extremely grateful for all you're doing at this time, and really recognize the extraordinary effort that's gone into these last several weeks. Jay, I'll turn it, oh, excuse me, did Kelly have a question?
I didn't know if you wanted to go over any of the other committees. The Enrichment Grants Committee actually met on the 22nd. We had a Zoom meeting and we reviewed 2 submissions and sent them back requesting additional information. And it was decided that the money, if and when it does get submitted, will be submitted for the next calendar year within the next budget. That's it.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for following through on that. Who is, I know it's you and Sean, who are the teacher representatives on that committee now?
It is Morris, Mrs. Morris, and
Mrs. Newberry.
Leslie Dustin, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Neil.
Sorry, I will just add, so if it's looking like they plan on applying for funds for next year, I think one of the issues that we'll run into is, as of yet, we do not have a settled contract. And so without a settled contract, we don't have approval for those funds for enrichment grants.
We did bring that up. You brought that up, did you not, Sean? I'm pretty sure that came up.
I did bring that up, yeah.
Okay.
And we all knew that the funds weren't rolling over, but that will be coming out of whatever was approved in the next year's budget.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, then I'll turn over to Jay for the superintendent's report.
Tom, I'll just piggyback on your gratitude to our educators, and also want to add that all those who support those educators, we recognize you as well in Staff Appreciation Week, and without your dedication, I mean, it's a team, and we're super grateful to have a great one. Everything I think that people have done, our teachers going above and beyond, contacting kids, our bus drivers helping to distribute materials, our ed assistants who've been helping our teachers with the load that they have in terms of communicating with students. They've all worked really well together, and it's been a privilege to see that happen under adverse conditions. And then really that's the bulk of what I wanted to talk about. I think in looking forward to the next year, I know we all have a lot of uncertainty, and it doesn't seem to improve week to week when we get our briefings from the secretaries. I'm hoping that we'll get a little more guidance from Secretary French tomorrow. As I mentioned earlier, Commissioner Edelblue gave us a lot of answers. In fact, Jamie sat in on that conversation with me, and we heard a lot of not sure, maybe mid-May we'll find out, on everything from will we be remote during the summer to will we start remote, to how do we handle end of the year celebrations. All that guidance just sort of bubbles up over time, and it makes it real difficult for us to answer the questions of our families and our employees who really would like to know what they can count on moving forward. So we'll do our best. I plan to send an update out to the community tomorrow because I will have submitted the waiver request, and we'll get that out. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. That's why I'm waiting till tomorrow. I'll make sure I have as many answers and I can definitively say that we've made the waiver request. And I've gotten some feedback from both agency and DOE to eliminate or to try to give as much concrete information as I can. That's about it.
Great. Thanks, Jay. And I don't want to go too far too without saying thanks to you directly as well, because you've been putting in an extraordinary effort over these last couple of months. The communications out to the community have been great, and your leadership has been as well. So I really appreciate that, and we'll call you out to lump you in with the same appreciation week this week too. So thank you, and as well to all of our other administrators who are on with us tonight too, because we're very thankful for all that Jamie is doing with on the business side of things, the bus routes, getting the food out to the students in need, Tony on the buildings and ground and keeping everything up to snuff and cleaned out there, and then Sean and Jessica at MCS too. You guys are doing amazing work. So thank you all. Thank you for being with us now, and thank you for doing all you're doing. Neil had his hand raised, I believe.
Only to add to Jay's point is that I believe in Vermont, the AOE is due to issue guidance on end of year school activities this Friday.
Okay, thank you. And thank you again, Jay. So Jamie is up next with the Business Administrator's Report, and I think we covered most of it earlier, but is there anything else to add, Jamie?
Well, we do have now, and Tony's on with me here. We do have some other projects. Of course, I'm sure I probably just put it all away because we do have some other projects we're still working on with the buildings and grounds, because your buildings and grounds don't stop just because the kids aren't there. And so we had approximately $24,000, I think, still remaining in the buildings site. No, it might have been buildings line. And so we're looking to do some painting, possibly using some of our own labor within the schools and not hiring it out. We're still waiting for our administrators to give us a list of folks who are excited and available for those tasks. We also are looking at some repairs to flooring that are posing some risks, some safety risks and hazards. So everything that we're doing with monies that are remaining for buildings and or grounds, we are prioritizing the expenditure of that for anything that's safety or risk related. The painting, not so much, but if we can get the labor, covered reasonably with the folks that we're still keeping on staff that might have some extra hours that they're willing to put in, to doing that type of task, then we're going to take advantage of that. I think it'll give them a sense of community to be able to be in the building and, help make it look nice. So when we all come back together. It's been a very interesting time in BA world, along with Tony and Matt and Sean and everybody on, you know, what we might be facing come fall and how do we do that. And to the point where I got an email forwarded to me from one of our Dresden parents. I don't know what side of the river they're on, asking if we come back to school in September, are we providing the masks daily for all the kids who are going to be in the building? And Jay even said that to me today because it was a question on the call. And I said, yeah, we'd be happy to if we could get them. Because right now I've got like 1,000 on order and they're on back order and they've been on back order, right, Tone? So I know the whole world's working on, you know, getting supplies ready, and we're staying in contact with those folks. And, you know, so there's a lot of questions maintenance wise and, you know, buildings wise, if we're going to bring students back in. So I know we're going to be very busy after the dust settles on the end of the school year, which needs to happen first. We need to make sure that, you know, all the instruction is taken care of for now, and then work together towards what it looks like for August or September. But things are moving forward. We're being frugal. We're being thoughtful with the funds we have. We know what the struggles are moving forward. We're having conversations with all of our administrators about what can you do without, what can we open the year without, what positions don't have to be hired for right now until we know when we're coming back. Dresden's doing a great job at, you know, savings this year, which can help offset the assessment going back out to Norwich, which can eventually help on what the revenue shortfalls might be. So we're on it. Thank you.
Great. Thanks again, Jamie and Tony, for all you're doing. Are there any questions for Jamie and or Tony at this point? Lisa.
I have to be honest, I hadn't thought at all about masks for next year, like just, yeah.
Yeah.
So my question is, would they have to be one-time use disposable masks?
I don't know.
Or could we depend on people washing the ones made out of material?
So we're hoping to get better guidance on that. It's a question that's been asked and not answered, because in addition to that, you know, they're saying that we'll still need to practice the 6 foot, you know, separations. So that's a whole nother situation, as many of our hallways are not wide enough with, you know, that many students or children and adults in the building in order to do that in a manner that, you know, there's a lot to it. So as we get the information out of the CDC and the guidance from our states, who have ultimate control on whether we can even come back or not, you know, but it's going to be a fun project.
If they could be material,
Mhm.
it feels as if this town has a lot of super
definitely.
creative people who are looking for reasons to help. And it feels as if we could make, I don't want to speak for the town, but it just feels like there are enough people out there who might be able to help us out, if that were possible. So maybe it would not have to be a humongous expense.
I think Lisa froze up there, but I certainly think that's something to consider.
Yeah.
So maybe
Yep.
it froze.
Sorry to throw us a
Absolutely.
little off track, but I just sort of was stunned by what I hadn't thought of.
And Ms. Hersey already made us a whole bunch of masks for our custodial staff. So yeah, we've been doing that. And Tony had a thought on that too. I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, I don't know if my connection is any good. Can you hear me?
You can.
My only thought on that, I think it's your decision as to whether we wear masks or not. I don't know, you know, how we can implement that. I mean, we can only recommend that people wear masks, but make them wear a mask. So I know most of us probably that live in Norwich would prefer to wear a mask, but I think that would have to come from the administration, school board, principal, superintendent.
that our community is doing this. Because I don't think we're going to get any guidance from any state or federal people, CDC, telling us about masks. It's an interesting subject. And then, like Jamie said, the distance part. How do we keep people at a safe distance? That's all. That's my comment. I think it's up to this group to decide where we're going with all of that.
Sorry, I dropped off for a second there.
Oh, bummer.
I wonder why you moved.
Yeah. Does Jay, did you have something else to add?
Yeah, just to Lisa's point, I wanted to throw out, there's so many variables. Like one of the questions that the superintendents were asking today is, what about transportation? How do you keep kids 6 feet apart on a school bus?
Yep. Yeah,
So-
that's another fun one. I'm gonna strap them to the roof.
And then disinfect every day and all those protocols. We're getting guidance slowly but surely in little trickles. And we'll just keep on waiting.
Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. I forgot to thank one other person, mainly because he's been in the background of all these meetings and making sure they go smoothly, but that's Josh, who's also been instrumental in making this remote learning thing happen anyways. But Josh, could you help send us into, well, actually, I gotta take take a roll call first. Or actually, I need even a motion from Kelly.
Move to enter into executive session in accordance with Title 1, Section 313 for the purpose of discussing personnel.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Jay can't second, but Jay has a question. Lisa seconds, and now I'll come to this question.
So my question is, this is a situation we haven't really, well, I guess we tried it at one point, maybe in our first attempt at this, but we have an executive session and then we need to come back in for a vote into public session. Josh, you gonna be able to help us out with that?
Yeah, I'll be here. I'll keep this one running. And then when you go to the other one, I'm going to see if I can transfer host on that one to someone else, but we'll get into that one. And then this one will keep running and you can come back into just make sure to use this link again to get back into this session. I'll be in this one. I'll probably leave the other one, but be in this one. So if anybody needs anything, come back here.
Okay.
Hey, Josh, can you send me an email with the link? Because that seems to work best with my system.
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay. And Josh has also provided us the link too, separately. We do have a second, so I'll take a roll call vote. And since you've changed on my, so Kelly is first.
Percy, yes.
Okay, Lisa.
Christy, yes.
Garrett.
Garrett, yes.
And Neil.
Odell, yes.
And Camden is yes as well. So I will see you in the other Zoom room.
Thank you.
See you. Thanks.
Jay,
Yes.
Jay, do you want me to stay and do the public session since I'm not actually at the school, or will you still do that?
It'd be, if it's great if do you have the time? Can you stick around?
Yeah, I can stick around.
That'd be great.
I'll just stay in this room then.
Okay.
Okay. Is this the exec session?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Gonna transfer, he transferred it to me.
Okay. So you have host now. I should be able to leave and it should continue without any hiccups, but I'll stick around for just a moment just to make sure everybody gets in here.
And Jessica should be back in the other room waiting for you.
Okay.
Josh, they told me I am now the host.
Okay, perfect.
And I am definitely listening to everybody talk, so I don't know if I'm in the right space.
That's just because I have two systems running. I'm going to mute this one. Hold on.
Okay.
Josh, I'm not sure if I'm in the right spot either.
I think you're supposed to be in there, Mr. Ganya.
How do I get in there?
I don't.
Sean, do you see the link in the chat?
The link in the chat. Oh,
I'm
yeah.
trying to get in the other session too.
Okay, Okay, I see the link.
Okay, I'll email it to you if I don't see you in there in a second.
Thank you.
Just so everybody knows, this is still recording and broadcasting on YouTube. The session that's here.
Hi guys, can you hear me? Okay, thank you.
We just got Sean wants to join us.
Yep. All right, Sean, I just sent you the link in email too, so if you want to load up your
Thanks.
email, you should be able to go through there. Okay, they've gone into non-public. They will be back when they're done with their non-public, and I think they have a couple votes they need to do at the end, but this will continue streaming and recording until they finish tonight. Thanks.
Hello.
Hello, I was loading my dishwasher.
Hello.
Hello. They should be coming back in the next few minutes.
Great. We are still recording and we're still streaming to YouTube.
I feel like a movie star.
You look like a movie star, Sean.
You do too. You haven't changed this whole time.
I sit very still, huh?
You do.
Sean, how come when you stop your video, it says my name?
I was just gonna say, how did there become two Jessica Liddies?
Yeah.
That's really interesting, isn't it?
I told you he was getting good at Zoom.
You know what it was? I couldn't find the link to get back in, so I went to the email that you sent me that said that, and I just pushed on it, and it got
Oh,
me here.
and it was specific to me. That's interesting.
Well, now I'm me. Now I'm not. How do you feel having two of you?
Well, the top one of me looks very, very different. It's a long Zoom day. This has been a long Zoom day for you too, huh?
I had a Zoom meeting every hour on the hour starting at 9 this morning. I feel like my computer and I are close.
Yeah. It's a lot of screen time.
I think I'm going to dream about my computer tonight.
I feel I should remind everyone we are still streaming to YouTube and recording this session.
That's okay. That's okay because look, it's just, oh, it's me now.
Oh, it's you now, yeah.
Shucks. I kind of liked being you for a while.
Were you in the office today or were you home?
No, I was in the office. I went back to my office. Yours was nice for a while.
The window and the light is great.
I like your desk the way it goes up and down.
Those are relatively inexpensive. Yeah, because then you don't have to stand all the time, but you don't have to sit all the time.
I just got your email asking for the link.
Yeah, I'm all set now.
It's like you're good.
Is Stuart still on the line?
He is not.
Oh.
Do we have any public still on the line?
There are two public still in the attendee list. I don't know if they're active. Welcome back, folks.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, we're still streaming to YouTube and we are recording and we have two attendees. I'm not sure if they're active though.
I see Claudette did that she is still with us and active. All right. Let's see, are we waiting on anyone now?
Jay and Jamie, it looks like. And Garrett's here. Okay, just Jay and Jamie. And frankly, I think we could probably move ahead without them even. We'll give them another minute.
They could come back as not themselves. When I came back, my little rectangle said Jessica Liddy.
To be here for this. So let's just keep moving. Back in public session, we have 4 to approve of, and I will note that we are going to table our item 9E, the approval absence request, to a later meeting. And my internet connection is again unstable. Can you hear me now? I saw it unstable. Okay. The approval of the 2021 second grade teacher, if someone will so move. Kelly.
So moved. Would you like me to repeat it?
Please do read that recommended action there, please.
Move to approve the hiring of Molly Gentine as a 1.0 FTE second grade teacher for the 2021 school year as presented.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Lisa.
Neil. Roll call. All those in favor?
Odell, yes.
All right. Garrett?
Garrett, yes.
Kelly?
Hersey, yes.
Lisa?
Christie, yes.
And Camden is yes as well, so that's unanimous. Next up is, and Kelly, if you wouldn't mind.
I don't mind. Move to approve the hiring of Ross McGee as a third grade teacher for the 2021 school year as presented.
Anyone? Second? Neil? All right, roll call vote. All those in favor? Neil?
Odell, yes.
Garrett?
Garrett, yes.
Kelly?
Hersey, yes.
Lisa?
Christie, yes.
And Camden, yes. So that's unanimous as well. Thank you. And Kelly, if you wouldn't mind moving down the list, approval of 2021 sixth grade teacher.
Move to approve the hiring of Kelly Grace as a sixth grade teacher for the 2021 school year as presented.
Second, Neil. Roll call vote. Neil, all in favor?
Odell, yes.
Garrett?
Garrett, yes.
Kelly?
Hersey, yes.
Lisa?
Christie, yes.
And Camden, yes, unanimous as well. And finally, approval of 2021 learning specialist. Kelly, please.
Move to approve the hiring of Patrick Gordon as a 1.0 FTE learning specialist for the 2021 school year as presented.
And do I have a second?
Second.
Neil. And I will do a roll call vote. All those in favor, Neil.
Odell, yes.
Garrett.
Garrett, yes.
Kelly.
Hersey, yes.
Lisa.
Christie, yes.
And Camden, yes, that's unanimous as well. And I see Mr. Gordon seems to be in our attendees list, so I will congratulate him directly if he's still with us and still listening, as well as the other 3 teachers who will be joining us. We're looking very much forward to having you.
Thank you very much.
Areas. Welcome, Patrick. Glad to have you.
I wouldn't have missed this for the world. I'm very excited to join this team.
Great. And we're looking forward with us on the MCS team here. It's a great one. Glad to have you.
I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. As I to table the last piece we had there for the public session approval of leave of absence request till our next, and I will look to our agenda topics template for everything for the June meeting, unless any members of the board would like to suggest additional agenda items at that time. I'm sure we will have an update on remote learning, on finances, and on the septic. But if anybody would like anything else added in between now and then, please reach out to me. And if no one has anything further to add, I would be happy to entertain a motion to adjourn. Kelly.
Move to adjourn.
Seconded by Lisa, and I will do a roll call vote.
Odell, yes.
Garrett.
Garrett, yes.
Kelly.
Hersey, yes.
Lisa. Lisa is muted.
Christie, yes.
Thank you. And Camden, yes. Thank you all for being with us. Sorry for the lengthy meeting. Congratulations again to Patrick and all of the other teachers who will be joining us. Thank you to all you educators during Appreciation Week. And thank you to Josh for smoothly leading us through this session this evening.
Yeah.
And no Zoom bombers. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tom.
Have a good night.
Thanks, guys.
Night
Good
all.
night.
Thank you.